Fighting multiple battles is making you physically and mentally sick. I run into all the time, really, neurodiverse couples who fight every battle that comes down the pike. Neurodiverse couples are notorious for just piling a bunch of disputes on the table without categorizing, prioritizing. They won't talk about how sex isn't good, the money problems, kid problems, quality time or lack thereof, chores are not getting done, or somebody feels like they're doing all the chores, and pet peeves, dirty dishes, the in-laws, and the list just goes on. And they're both just chasing their tails, quite honestly. And the problem with that is, if you are not judicious about which battles to fight and you just fight everything, then you become toxic to one another. And you get the two of you in the same room, and it almost always ends up in some kind of a debate or argument or fight, etc. The problem with this is people who fight every battle that comes down the pike also are in a lot of emotional pain. Chronic, low-grade emotional pain is what I call it. And those who are in chronic, low-grade emotional pain tend to perceive slights and disrespect where there is none. And if they are always on the alert for any sign of disrespect or lack of cooperation or a personal insult or being controlled by the other person, etc., they're going to be much more willing to continue to fight every battle that comes down the pike. So over time, they're fighting more and more battles, thus increasing the emotional pain, and you're in this cycle. So obviously, you would want to do the opposite of that. And my suggestion would be to pick the top 3 issues that you want to resolve. I'm not saying don't fight any battles, and I am saying you want to do fair fighting, but you don't want to fight every battle that comes down the pike. And so I would say pick 3. Just for starters, pick 3, but don't fight all 3 at one time. So brainstorm about the most important issues. Keep it to 3 just for now. Try to have some dialogue on one of those 3. And then when you get some resolve on one of those, then you can move on to the second one. Then you can move on to the third one. All others are not fair game for one damn comment. Let me repeat that. Anything outside of those top 3 is not fair game for debate, argument, discussion, etc. Pick your battles carefully. And if you choose to fight every battle that comes down the pike, you are choosing mental illness and physical illness. And if you're getting sick by fighting too many battles at once, hasn't manifested in mental health issues or physical health issues yet, give it a few years, and then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Today I wanted to talk to some of the NT partners, especially neurotypical wives, as to why your attempt at damage control often fails. And what I mean by damage control is the relationship is not firing on all 8 cylinders. In fact, it may be down to just 2 or 3 cylinders, and it's sputtering all over the place, and it has been on the decline for several months, if not years. And so you've made your best effort to try to get your Asperger's or high-functioning autistic spouse or partner on the same page with you and understand, hey, we're in trouble here. This relationship is drowning. Can we be a team? Work with me as a team player, and let's see if we can fix this thing. And so that's your attempt at damage control, and that's the term I'm using here. So when we're in some form of distress, either psychologically or physically, we tend to want to reach out for assistance, and we may do that by asking for help, telling people we need help, complaining if we're not being heard by those who can help. We may yell, we may get angry if we have to, so we would start off basically asking for assistance. And then when repeated requests for assistance go unanswered, then we can escalate to getting aggressive because we're really in need of some assistance at this point. So when we're in some state of need and we can't fulfill that need by ourselves, and we really need the assistance from somebody else, we often assume that A, the people that we reach out to or the person that we're reaching out to will listen, B, they will understand what we're going through and have some empathy and compassion, and C, they will do their best to help if they love us and care about us, right? So, for example, as a child, when you had a safety need and that need was going unmet for whatever reason, and you made it known that this need was going unmet, your parents most often would jump in and take care of that need. They'd make sure that you had plenty of liquids, plenty of food, shelter. They taught you about safety measures to take when you cross the street, and so on. They protected you. They did their best in most cases to meet your needs. So if we had decent parenting growing up, we just assume now as adults that those who love and care for us will be interested in meeting our needs, especially when we're in some state of psychological or physiological distress. We just assume that our significant other, our partner or spouse, who supposedly loves and cares for us, will be very interested in meeting our needs, similar to how our parents did. But when we have a certain set of needs, and let's use the example of when we need some emotional reciprocity, we need some quality time from our partner, we need some validation and so on, and we don't get these basic emotional needs met, we will tend to cry out for help in a way, and that kind of looks like a lot of complaining, anger, even months and years of having the need unmet. It can turn into resentment and bitterness. Now, if we're in a relationship with someone on the autism spectrum who has mind blindness issues, alexithymia issues, then we are in a situation where we're with somebody who is not going to reciprocate as much as we need. So when we're in a relationship and we're not getting our emotional needs met, we're not getting emotional reciprocity or validation, we're not getting our feelings listened to, we feel like we're misunderstood, we feel like we're not as important to the other person as his or her work or special interest, then we do want to make it known that, hey, I'm really suffering here, please help me out, please meet these needs, this is how it's supposed to be, normal people meet one another's needs in this way, why can't this happen in this relationship? So the NT wife complains vehemently that her needs are going unmet, and she tries desperately to have a connection, and the more she does this, the more she pushes him away, him being the high-functioning autistic husband, because now he's retreating as a form of anxiety reduction. He's retreating into his special interest, into his work, into his man cave, any place to get away from what is now his main source of anxiety. Think of this example here. Let's say you're a child and both of your parents are on the autism spectrum, and you fall and scrape your knee really bad and it's bleeding and you're crying and you're hysterical, and your parents go, hey, you need to calm down because all that screaming and crying is really raising my stress and I'm not going to be able to help you until you calm down. And so they leave. They go to the other end of the house and they leave you over there bleeding to figure it out for yourself because your approach is stressing them out and they can't help you when they're stressed out, so they retreat. Of course, that scenario is ridiculous, right? Similarly, as the NT wife tries to cry out to her high-functioning autistic husband and say, look, I'm suffering over here. I'm having some mental health issues. I'm having some physical health issues. My emotional needs are not being met. I feel like I'm shriveling up like a flower that's not getting water. Can you please connect with me and give me some emotional reciprocity, some empathy, some validation? Just listen to my feelings. Listen to my thoughts as I describe them. Try to understand what I'm going through. And all of these pleas for help end up pushing him further away, which now makes the NT wife think, I am never going to get my needs met here. I am totally lost as to what to do, and my best efforts to reconnect fail. Now back to the childhood example again, where you've fallen and scraped your knee. You would never have the thought, okay, well, my parents just said I'm crying too loudly and they've left. They don't want to help me because I'm being too noisy. So I'll stop crying, I'll wipe my tears away, I'll bandage up my knee on my own, and then I can reconnect with my parents. They'll be okay with me then. Of course you wouldn't do that. Similarly, as an NT wife in a relationship with an autistic husband, you wouldn't go, well, it's been 2 or 3 years since I've had my emotional needs met, and so I think what I'm going to do is just meet my own emotional needs. I'll just have to make sure that I validate myself and listen to myself and understand myself and take care of myself. You wouldn't do that, right? It would be ridiculous, because as a 5-year-old child, you can't parent yourself. And as a 35-year-old adult, you can't be in a marriage with yourself. So this brings us to the point of what can be done. And what has to be done is the approach that you are using to reach out for help, in this case with your significant other who is on the autism spectrum, the way that you're trying to establish a reconnection, the way you're trying to get validation, someone to listen to you, someone to understand you, someone to spend quality time with you, somebody to make you feel important. The approach that you're using has to yield the opposite effect of pushing that person away. What would be the opposite effect? That would be pulling them in. How do you pull them in? The answer is to come up with a communication strategy that does not raise the anxiety of your autistic partner. Because as soon as his anxiety has launched, all efforts to receive a quality connection, empathy, validation, understanding, cooperation will be lost. Because now the autistic husband, in this case, will be more concerned about self-preservation. How do you find this communication strategy? It's going to be important for you to find a marriage and family therapist or a counselor, psychiatrist, whomever, who has some expertise in autism spectrum disorders and will know how to come up with a strategy that can keep the autistic person's anxiety low while at the same time getting the neurotypical's emotional needs met. Today I got a brief message for the NT wives out there who are in a relationship with a husband on the autism spectrum, although what I'm about to say would apply if the inverse were the case as well. In other words, he is the NT and she is the one with autism spectrum disorder. But you may have run into a situation, and I'm sure you have, where you've tried to have a conversation with him about some of the relationship issues you'd like to resolve. And the thing just ended badly, and always does. And you just get to the point where you just give up even trying to have conversations about difficult topics. So what goes on, and this is kind of hidden, and honestly, this conversation is going to be a bit spooky because we're talking about stuff that's almost at a spiritual level. But anyway, you, by virtue of feeling emotionally deprived and not getting the emotional reciprocity that you want and honestly deserve, or in a state of anger, frustration, perhaps depression, anxiety, and so on. And why wouldn't you be? But when you go into a situation where now you're going to have a conversation with him, you come into that conversation negatively charged. And what I mean by that is you're giving off a negative vibration that he will pick up on. And he won't even know he's picking up on it. He'll just know that now his anxiety and anger is up because now he has matched your vibration. And so we call this a vibrational match. In this case, it's a negative one. So now he is charged with an element of negativity. His anger, resentment, and so on now begins to rise, which now his negative energy field comes to you, which feeds your existing negativity, which then goes back to him, and so now you're in this negative feedback loop. So you're giving off a negative charge, he picks up on the negative charge, then becomes also a sender of more negative energy, which you pick up on, and we call this, again, a vibrational match. So I know this whole conversation is a little mysterious. It's something that you can't see. But you know there are things that exist, even though you can't see it. You're breathing right now. You don't actually see the air, for example. But you've already experienced this. Maybe you weren't conscious of it. Have you ever been around somebody and you just felt uneasy around that person? They weren't doing anything wrong. They weren't giving off any obvious facial cues or body language. They may not have even been talking, They were just within your field, and you just felt uneasy around them, and you didn't even know why. So we know that this business of having an energy field that extends a few feet beyond your actual physical body, we know that that exists. So this happens, but it happens more profoundly when the feelings in this case are more intense. And there's a wide range of emotions, and each emotion has different levels of intensity. Sadness is a low vibration. Panic is kind of a high vibration. They give off different levels of adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, cortisone, all of these fight or flight chemicals that get you either ready to run or to fight or to hide, or in this case we're talking about it gets you geared up to argue and fight and defend yourself and try to get the other person to cooperate and so on. All of that business is energy by definition. And you give off this energy, and that person that you're arguing with picks up on this energy, and that's why they argue right back. And that's why you get nowhere. All you've done is exchanged a bunch of negative energy. And now both parties are more resentful, more angry, and exhausted, and more willing to just give up because we never get anywhere with these conversations. So this begs the question, well, what can I do in that situation? Well, a good first step would be to be aware of what's going on behind the scenes. If you peel back the curtains, you will see that anger and anxiety is just waiting to leap out in energy form. And so when you try to have a conversation the next time with your husband, and by the way, this works both ways. The ASD husband needs to use this information when he has a gripe with his NT wife as well. Go into that conversation with a different mindset such that you are aware that you could get charged with negative energy. In other words, getting the chemicals going in you that stimulate anxiety and anger and frustration, and you're wanting things to be fair, you're wanting people to behave, you want to get people to do what you think they should be doing. All of that type of self-talk is getting your body charged up with negative energy. So the best thing you could do, and it would be a good first step, is to, when you go into this next conversation that may happen later today, ask yourself this question: how can I go into this conversation and have the mindset where I'm going to be positively charged? I'm going to come into this conversation with as much love, compassion, and gratitude as I can muster. I'm going to visualize how this person was back in the day when I actually enjoyed him and actually loved him and actually loved to be around him. I'm going to visualize that so that even though I may not necessarily feel that way today, that's going to be what I'm going to visualize, so that when I come into this conversation, I'm actually giving off positive vibes. And then he's going to pick up on some of that positivity. He's going to match you vibrationally. You get some of that positivity back. Now you're in a positive feedback loop. Links below this video for more information. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, this is Mark. Click on the join button underneath any of my videos, then click on members only videos, and then click on join. And for $9.99 a month, you'll have access to members only videos, which are excerpts from previous workshops I've conducted for NT partners, ASD partners, and the neurodiverse couple. New videos will be uploaded weekly.